Welcome back, everyone, to Moving Offline. Today we have Timothy Casey from Sunbeam Wireless. This is one of the companies that I enjoy the most because they listen to the feedback and they're building tools that are distraction-free but still productive. Timothy, we are thankful that you're here today. So help us understand who you are and what is Sunbeam Wireless.
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Jose. It's good to meet you. I've been a fan of your content for a few years now. So I'm a software developer at Sunbeam Wireless, and I started working for the company probably about a year ago, but I was a customer and used their phone very happily for about 3 years before that. So Sunbeam Wireless is a dumb phone company. It was founded by two friends, Sterling and Nelson, in 2018. And Sterling and Nelson are both Mennonites, which is a group of Christians where they tend to have rules in their community pertaining to technology. They tend to be mindful about how everybody in the community uses technology and how it can affect them positively or negatively. So many people in those communities were using 2G and 3G dumb phones. They didn't hop on the smartphone craze, but in 2018, a lot of carriers announced that they were discontinuing the 2G and 3G services eventually. So Sterling and Nelson kind of got together and saw if they could make their own dumb phone to, replace the 2G and 3G devices people were using. And they always joke they came together and said, how hard could it be? And then 2 years later, they finally had a product that they were selling after getting it, certified with Verizon, AT&T, and all that. So that's Sunbeam. They make dumb phones for people to use. Like you said, they're kind of distraction-free, but still focused on productivity.
So one thing I know from using a Sunbeam device is that they are optimized for the form factor of the device. And that's something that I like, something that I actually enjoy a lot. But one of the things that I would like to ask you is, how is it that it's so expensive, right? Many people have this qualm, this difficulty getting beyond the price, and things have gotten better over the last few years, with more features and better functionality. But why would I pay for a phone $300, $249 for the Horizon when it can do less than a smartphone? What is the actual value that I'm deriving out of it?
Right. So there are plenty of phones out there, whether they're in, the smartphone form factor or the flip form factor, like the Cat S22, I guess, that are using, just the Android operating system. And Google will, happily let anybody slap that on a phone for free because, Google gets value out of that from harvesting people's data. So plenty of companies can, build a smartphone and keep the costs very low because the operating system is just provided for them and they can put it on there for free. And when you put Android into a different form factor, it doesn't stop you from using all kind of distracting applications that you don't want on there. And a lot of the times the Android operating system isn't really optimized for being navigated or used with so many physical buttons. So Sunbeam has put a lot of effort into actually making an operating system that's meant to be used on the flip form factor. You can navigate very easily with all the buttons. Everything is fast and snappy. It's not using an operating system that's too heavy for the processing power that's actually on the phone. So everything works quickly. It's not laggy. It doesn't kill the battery, as quickly as, a really heavy operating system might. And the features are kind of picked specifically to minimize distractions, but keep productivity.
So on the topic of productivity, you come from a software background, and I'm kind of interested to understand, well, why wouldn't a smartphone be more productive for my work, for my job? And why is it that you personally decided to get a Sunbeam instead of all of the other alternatives that are more in between, like the Cat S22 or the Xiaomi F21? You have a lot of dumb phones out there that have full operating systems, full-fledged tools. And why is it that I need a more restricted version to a certain degree? What is the actual focus or other benefit that I can get from using one of your phones versus these more transition devices?
So I guess I do have a software background, but I came to Sunbeam in a bit of an interesting way. So I studied computer science and statistics in college. And then after college, I figured I didn't want to start my career quite yet. And I went and I actually did ministry for a little bit with a group called A Simple House. And that's based in Washington, D.C. And essentially you went and tried to form relationships and help people that were living in homeless encampments or public housing. And then when you were done with your ministry, you were supposed to come back to the house and it was supposed to have a bit of a monastic feel to it, I guess. So it was started in 2003 and that meant there was, no TV, no air conditioning, no internet. And that was appealing to me, trying to disconnect a little bit at the end of college. But not having internet wasn't a very big barrier when I arrived there with a smartphone with an unlimited data plan. So I still found myself scrolling through YouTube and Reddit every day before I went to bed and every day when I woke up and, just being more distracted than I wanted to be. So I was in an environment where I was really trying to, kind of be intentional and disconnect. So I initially got a Cat S22 and then after a few weeks decided that it wasn't quite extreme enough for me, I guess. And I got the Sunbeam after that. So my kind of goal was there. My goal there was kind of total disconnection. So for about 8 or 9 months there, I kind of, if I wanted to use the internet, I had to go to the library. So I'd use the internet for a couple hours at a time, a couple days a week, and that was about it. And I found living my life like that really did reduce distractions. Every day, you have a choice or you have choices in front of you to live a life that's fulfilling and meaningful for you. And if you always have the very easy choice of, an attention grabbing smartphone there, then I think you'll make one choice to, scroll for a while and then make one choice to scroll for a while. And those just pile up over time. So I found without having internet access be on internet access with me at all times, I read a lot more. I journaled more, made, more intentional effort to form kind of offline community, even as I'm working. Still, just with a dumb phone, I find it much easier to focus for long periods of time on my work and accomplish tasks. And even at the beginning of the day to create a task list and kind of begin the day intentionally, figure out what it is you have to do that day and kind of create a plan for yourself is definitely much easier to do without a smart device, I think.
So it sounds that the Sunbeam affected you personally, and you were excited to not only use it but also work for them. Which is an amazing thing. And I think it can be helpful for a lot of people as well who are in a situation where they're trying to regain control over their habits and create better patterns for the future. And I think that's where the value is added tremendously from more basic devices that are truly optimized. I'm curious to know what is the feedback that you're getting over time from people? And how do you come to the decision of adding email, which is the latest feature that has been added to the Sunbeam line? And why did you decide to do that if a priori, like when you think about it from the get-go, email doesn't seem like the most calm or the less distraction-free utility?
We do get a lot of good feedback from customers who we really made a difference in their marriages. They're able to be much more present to their spouses or their kids. I would say that's really, in a lot of the reviews we get, you'll see people say that, buying a Sunbeam has really positively impacted the relationships with people in their life. The people that are kind of around them day to day that they maybe, just take for granted. They're able to be much more present and intentional spending time with them. I think regarding email, I think one interesting thing about Sunbeam that's maybe different from a lot of the other companies popping up is that Sunbeam's main customer base starting out was people that had, like I said, 2G and 3G dumb devices. So I think in a lot of ways, maybe other companies are approaching the problem trying to create something like an anti-smartphone, like creating a device with maybe an e-ink display or something like that. So it's designed for you to, use it as little as possible, I guess. And I think Sunbeam's philosophy, more replacing those 2G and 3G devices, I think we're more willing to add some tools like that those old devices did have on them, something like email, which a lot of people can get, caught up in and distracted by just kind of checking it over and over again throughout the course of the day. And I think we've made one step to make it a little more stripped down or less distracting by kind of removing the ability to view and look at attachments or images or videos in there. So it is text only email. So it's not going to be a full-fledged email client, I guess. So you could, yeah, you would be tempted to kind of constantly check all the time. You're only going to get the text of what people are sending you, and you're only going to be able to send them back, text responses. So it's just to kind of maybe keep you connected or in the loop if you're on the move all the time. And email is something that you really do need. And then, yeah, I guess the other thing that makes Sunbeam a little unique is if you don't need email, then we sell the configuration. There's not just one Sunbeam phone that you can go on the website and buy there. There's all kinds of different software configurations. You can pick the one that has the right level of connectivity that you're looking for.
Talk to me a little bit more about that specific portion because I think a lot of people look at it and say, why wouldn't I get the device that has all the features versus why would I pay the same money for a device that only has talk and text? I understand that in a religious sense, especially from coming from a Mennonite community where you may have certain levels of access that you want to give to different people. But why would I choose to restrict myself? What is the actual value that I can derive out of that in order to be mindful, but at the end of the day, why would I have less features than more features?
Yeah. So I think in a bit of a funny way, having less features is the feature when you're looking at a dumb device. Like we've already talked about, there's plenty of, Android smartphones with all the features on them that you could buy for. But if you're the kind of person that's just decided that, a smartphone isn't really adding value to your life, if all the features aren't actually improving your life and you want something more dumbed down, then there's devices for you there. And I would say probably I think most people do go for the devices with more features. I would say the biggest kind of splitting point for people is whether or not to get something with no hotspot or a hotspot. So if people are really looking to disconnect from their smartphone and they think, I want to disconnect so much that I can't even hotspot my dumb phone and use my smartphone off of that, then I'll get the thing with no hotspot at all. And then I would say, beyond that, fewer features would be up to somebody's personal preference, I guess. We have models that don't actually do media at all on them. So you can't download music, pictures on them. And maybe somebody wants to get that for their kid. They don't want their kid to be able to receive images that people might be sending them in text messages. So, yeah, I think if you are the kind of person that's looking to buy a dumb device, I think there's a bit of a paradox there where fewer features is actually kind of the feature that you're looking for. That's the selling point.
It sounds to me that the goal is to help people become aware of what they need and what they don't in order for them to make a decision about the lifestyle that they want to lead. And maybe, you get a different device, a tablet or something that you can connect via hotspot for the extra features, but you get to decide what you want. And I do like that a la carte functionality because it's still the same hardware, but it's just minor things here and there that make it your own unique experience. Timothy, I would like to move the conversation a little bit more about what have you learned and what is Sunbeam developing for the future? A lot of people listening will be checking out the links, but they want to know what's coming, what's the exciting thing that they should be looking forwards, and how can they get feedback to the company so that they can help shaping the direction of where you're moving.
Yeah. So I would say for the future of Sunbeam, maybe we've gotten a lot of feedback from customers who either have a smartphone that was issued to them by their company, or maybe they run a company themselves and they have a smartphone for that. But when they come home, they want to be able to disconnect kind of. So we've been working on a service that we're calling NumberLink. And essentially we're, building software on the Sunbeam phone, building servers, and then building an app for an Android smartphone. And it'll pretty much let you, connect your Sunbeam device in a smartphone. So you'll be able to initiate sending calls and texts or receiving calls and texts from either phone using either number. So if you have a smartphone that your business gave you, but you don't really want to bring it home with you, you can leave it plugged in at the office. And if somebody texts you to your number or calls your business number, it'll show up right there on your Sunbeam phone and you'll be able to, answer the call or send them a text back using your smartphone number. So it'll be kind of a seamless connection there between your smartphone and your dumb phone. And then, yeah, we'll also be building out, an internet client, which you could use on iOS devices and eventually laptops as well, which is something I'm a little excited for. Like a lot of people, I think the T9 texting is not always the easiest thing in the world. So it'll be nice to be able to, see text there on my laptop and be able to type out responses to people and send them via the phone. So I'd say, yeah, that number link service is probably the biggest thing coming soon from Sunbeam.
So you mentioned the client, and I know that this is in development and something that you're going to be working with. But if I understand correctly, what you're hoping to do is to create something that bridges the experience between the phone and your computer. So you don't have to type in it all the time on the phone, and you can kind of address some of these messages from the computer side, like in the same that way that iOS does it with like iMessage. You can do it on your laptop, you can do it on your tablet, something like that. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. So I guess the main use case that I threw out there was for linking your Sunbeam with an Android phone. And there you'll be able to kind of seamlessly text from either device or call from either device. But of course, yeah, you'll also be able to link it with other clients, which you might not be able to call because those clients don't have the ability, but you'll still be able to send texts, kind of like you said, linking kind of like you can with a Mac and an iPhone or an Android phone and a Windows PC.
That sounds like a really cool integration and something that I think a lot of companies, especially in the dumb phone space, are looking to do. So I hope that this materializes. I know it's not easy. It takes a lot of resources and it takes a lot of trickery going back and forth. So I'm excited to see what you guys are able to develop. Timothy, thank you for being in the podcast. I really appreciate your time explaining a little bit of the in and outs of what this flip phone can do for people and how it can become a better companion for everyday life. If you can give us a final word, I would appreciate that. I always like to give my guests the final word. So tell us anything that you want to tell us about Sunbeam, about yourself, and maybe a tip or two about how people can integrate this lifestyle into their everyday living.
As somebody that's used a dumb phone for the last about 3 years, I think my final word would just be a word of encouragement to anybody that's thinking about switching. That's that you'd be surprised how little your life kind of changes when you make the switch. And I do mean that as a word of encouragement because the switch can seem scary and you think you run into a lot of friction or a lot of bumps. But I really do think that the main use of the smartphone is really as a device to kind of grab our attention. I don't think it's designed. I don't think a lot of the things on there are really extremely helpful or extremely interesting. I would say the main thing that the smartphone does is keep your attention. And when you make the switch, you'll find that you have a whole lot more attention to distribute to different places, and you'll feel much more free to choose things that will add kind of meaning and fulfillment to your life instead of, giving your attention to a smartphone.
That was Timothy Casey from Sunbeam Wireless. Thank you for listening to Moving Offline, and we hope that today's conversation gave you a glimpse of what Sunbeam can do. I think it's an excellent company, and I think it's one of my favorites just because they are constantly listening to the feedback, creating new tools for you to use, and creating that environment where you can decide what is it, what you need, and what gives you value. Thank you for listening to Moving Offline. Remember to give us a like, give us a share with a friend, and also a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you are using those platforms. And to support, there are also links in the description. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next time.